Welcome to Lesson 7 and the Easy Crochet level. Today we'll be following along with a pattern to learn the moss stitch. Okay, so this swatch is a version of the moss stitch. This is a double crochet followed by a chain stitch repeated across the row. The double crochets are worked into the chain space of the row below. Let's take a look at the front page before we begin. The notes section lets us know that this is a variation of the stitch and uses a chain one. The pattern calls for a 4mm hook and uses an acrylic double knit yarn. The swatch is nearly 2 inches in height and 2.5 inches in width. The gauge is 4 rows by 5 stitches per inch. Here are the chart symbols and stitch names in both UK and US terms, along with the abbreviations. Both the written and photo instructions state chain 12 and make a DC in the second chain from the hook. Remember, the loop on the hook isn't counted. This tells us that there is a turning chain of 1 and there should be 11 stitches. This is clearer to see on the chart. Okay, so let's start crocheting. I've made 12 chains. Now I'll make the first stitch into the second chain. Next, the pattern says to chain 1, skip a chain and make a DC. These stitches are between asterisks and will be repeated 5 times. I tend to refer to repeats as a set. The chart alternates between the X and the chain, but you can see that there are 5 sets. Chain 1. And we skip this chain and make a DC in this one. That's the first set. Chain 1, skip a chain and a DC in the next. That's the second set. Chain 1, skip a chain and make a DC. The third set. The fourth. And now the fifth. That's our first row completed. There are 6 stitches and 5 chains, which equals 11 stitches in total. For row 2, we'll be repeating the same set as row 1. Chain 1 and turn your work. These chain spaces are where the DC stitches will go. We'll skip this stitch and work a DC into the first chain space. Now we work the set 5 times again. Chain 1, skip a stitch, DC in the next chain space. I'll speed up to the last stitch. The last DC is worked into the turning chain. And row 2 is done. The stitch count stays the same. You can see the moss stitch emerging now. Chain 1 and turn your work. Row 3 is a repeat of row 2. Skip the first stitch and a DC goes in the chain space. Once again, chain 1, skip the stitch below and work DCs into the chain space. Once again, the set is repeated 5 times. I'll skip to the last stitch. Remember, the last DC is worked into the turning chain. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 DC stitches and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 chain spaces. This is the turning chain, which we don't count, although we make a stitch in it. Repeat row 2 for rows 4, 5 and 6, and I'll be back for row 7. Okay, so we finished row 6. Row 7 will be worked into the V's of both the stitches and the chains. Be sure not to work into the chain space. I've chained one and turned my work. Now we'll work DCs along the row. The chains can be tight, so wiggle your hook and push the work onto it. Just continue working along the row, making sure you're not working into the chain space. I'll speed up a little, as I'm sure you've got the idea by now. Don't work into the turning chain at the end. You should have 11 stitches. Now for the last row. Chain 1 and turn the work. Work slip stitches along the row. Try not to make them too tight, like this. If you do, just frog the offending stitches. This is how the slip stitches should look. Continue along the row, and I'll come back at the end. And this is our last slip stitch and the end of the swatch. Check your gauge and see if you have full rows by 5 stitches per inch. Every designer has their own way of writing patterns. This tutorial was made using one of mine, but hopefully it was a clear introduction into reading them. You can find a link to the complete pattern below. If you want to make a bigger piece, make an uneven amount of chains, plus 1 for turning. Once you've watched the changing colour tutorial, there's a link to my free scarf pattern which uses the moss stitch. Thanks for joining me, and hope to see you in lesson 8, where we'll be creating a mesh fabric. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below. See you in the next lesson.